Here I sit in my hotel room in Burlington, North Carolina, pondering how I know what I know. Actually, I pondered this on Tuesday. I thought about it on Wednesday. Thursday, I stressed about it, and by yesterday, I had convinced myself that I really didn't know anything. As I considered the so-called knowledge I had learned over the years, I realized that most of my knowledge was handed to me. I didn't have to question or even prove it. I just had to learn it. So, here's what I know. As I viewed Rashomon through my English and educator lenses, I loved it. I enjoyed watching for any literary element the author and the director might have used. I recognized the symbolism of the sword, the mood-setting darkness of the torrential rain, and the sunlight to show goodness or enlightenment. One example of verbal irony that I loved was when Tojimaru is begging the woman to marry him, and he says he will stoop to doing odds and ends on the street if that would sway her, as if he hadn't stooped low enough by raping her. Of course, it was probably a translation issue, but I chuckled nonetheless. I appreciated the development of the complex characters. I even thought I recognized a plotline based on the ancient story of the great flood of the earth. Since our study guide corroborated the author's use of ancient stories to tell his moral truths, I thought, okay, maybe I'm right, or maybe I'm not. I can't prove it. Another part of the film that was humorous to me was the theatrics and music. At one point, the music had a section that sounded like the cartoon dog Scooby-Doo, but instead of Scooby saying "Ruh-roh," we heard a horn making that same "Ruh-roh" as we waited in suspense. I'm sure that was unintended, but we had been warned about the music. I viewed Rashomon from my education background, but I can't prove any of it. I can argue it, opine about it, and even insist on it, but I can't prove it. As I raced to the computer to share what I thought to be true about Rashomon with my classmates, I was just as anxious to hear what they thought to be true. Sure, we agreed on some points, but we were really more like the characters in the play. We each had our own take on different symbols, imagery, motive, and whodunit. To me, that sharing of ideas was almost as good as watching the movie. I opened my mind to the possibilities I hadn't considered. There was give and take of intellectual conjecture, but there was no proof. And I now know about myself that I am not skeptical enough in a philosophical sense to want to know who done it. In fact, I don't really care to know how the man died because once I know that, I don't think the story will have the same allure. Its creativity will be spoiled. I think we were supposed to consider human nature and human motivation, but I don't think the author or the filmmaker intended for us to prove it. So I use my education to help me make factual, rational decisions, but most of the time I use my life experiences, a strong belief system, and educated guess to help open my mind to the many possibilities of human nature and why people do what they do.